Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 5 of IGEL Weekly. I'm your host, Andy Whiteside. Got a good group today. I've got a good topic to cover today. I'm excited about this. It's been years in the making of do we, don't we, why not, do we have to? And I'm going to ask all those great questions to our guests here today. Of course, I've got Chris Feeney, who's my local sales engineer and always on here and able to add a lot of value and content. Chris, how's it going?
It is going well. It has been a whirlwind of activity since the beginning of the year, and today's topic is one of those big things. I'm looking forward to it.
So, Chris, you have your camera on you, and I can see you. I'm gonna make a statement. It's almost the end of January. 1/12 of 2021 is over. Almost.
That's amazing.
Scary.
I almost turned in my 7-day trial before the first week was out.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
All right, so we've got a couple of expert guests with us. We got Dan O'Farrell. Dan is with IGEL. Dan, what's your exact title over there?
My exact title is Senior Director of Product Marketing. So my team and I work pretty closely with product management and marketing, and obviously our primary customer is sales.
Okay.
Yep.
And obviously, NComputing must fall into that mix if you're on the call with us, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So NComputing, you can think of it as an extension of our technology, one of our key technology partners. So we get involved, with messaging, sales tools, collateral, et cetera, in support of those efforts as well. Yep.
Okay, great. So in addition to Dan, we also have Simon Cleffin on. Simon and I we're an interesting pair, right? We go to these conferences like VMworld, and Simon goes and talks to a vendor like a Lenovo or an NComputing or somebody and tells them that they need to be working with IGEL. And then the next day I show up at the same booth and have the same conversation with them, and then we go back and strategize and go hit them again. It's kind of been interesting and fun to do that at these conferences through the years. Simon, what is your official title over there?
My official title is VP of Strategic Alliances and Business Development. I look at it as I'm the catch-all for everything that doesn't actually generate revenue, but is important to the business and the ecosystem. And that somebody needs to look after it. They throw it at me, and I try and figure out how the hell am I going to get this to happen. So that's my job.
You're the garbage man of IGEL.
I am indeed. I'm the bottom feeder of IGEL. And I like the analogy of you and me as a wrestling tag team.
I was wondering how the magic occurred, right? I mean, I've been to these trade shows, and I didn't realize you guys had a secret dynamic duo thing going on.
Oh, yeah. We're a tag team.
Yeah, it's kind of like little bumblebees. We just attack them from all different angles and pretend we don't know each other, and then come back and see them later together, kind of stuff. It's kind of fun, and it's all for the best cause. I mean, we're going to talk about IGEL being software-defined endpoint computing here in a minute, and as people who listen to our podcast already know that, and how that just applies to just about any hardware platform, except for the ARM platform, which now we get to say we apply to that too. And we're going to go into that in some great detail here in a minute. Hey guys, let's start by making sure our listeners know what the ARM computing platform is, what Raspberry Pis are, and what NComputing as a company is, and then let's jump into the story around our blog that we're reviewing here today. Came out a few days ago. IGEL teams up with NComputing to bring IGEL OS to ARM-based endpoints. That's our topic for today. Let's start a little bit with some history lesson on ARM and Raspberry Pi and NComputing. Simon, Dan, which one do you guys want to take that?
I think, Simon, I'm going to hand it to you because you really drove this. So go ahead.
This is a subject that's very close to my heart. So ARM is a chip architecture. It's a reduced instruction set or a RISC set of computer chip. It essentially competes directly with x86 as an alternative, and x86, as probably everyone knows, is a complex instruction set computing environment. And can I show my screen? Can I share something out there?
Yeah. You can, but it's just a podcast, so it'll just be us.
Oh, it's just a podcast. All right. Well, then on the podcast, I won't bother sharing that. So I have a picture in front of me showing all the various different sort of annual shipments by volume in 2022 of thin clients, 6 million, desktops, 86 million, laptops, 162 million, tablets, 137 million, phones, 1.3 billion, and IoT devices, 1 billion plus. Hey, guess what the number one architecture for IoT plus is ARM. And IGEL wants to take part in that business in 5 years' time. We see as a natural progression from our ability to be able to solve problems on the thin client, desktop, and laptop. We have no solutions really for tablets and phones, but we definitely see ARM as a way to go.
So I got
to. And then, Simon, one more quickly question, because you asked me what is the Raspberry Pi. The Raspberry Pi is an implementation of the ARM chipset. It's actually a board that gives you the functionality, gives you the input, output, and the memory and all the other things. And the latest version of Raspberry Pi, or one of the most recent versions, is the Raspberry Pi 4, which is a full 64-bit implementation with plenty of storage, with support for dual monitors, with all the things that you'd really want from a sensible thin client. And that is why IGEL has jumped into this market now, because we believe the platform, we may be second to market, but we are jumping in with the right platform. We never did the Raspberry Pi 3 because we never saw the power to deliver what we think our customers want. Sorry,
so that's really
back to you, Andy.
Well, I do want to come back to you because that's exactly where I wanted to go next. I got to tell a funny story, though. ARM is the reason I'm here today, and here's why I'll tell you that story. My high school years, I had a girlfriend whose dad was working for a little company called Qualcomm. And I kept noticing that he was making good money, but he was getting mostly paid in stock. And he was telling all his children to buy with their extra money, Qualcomm stock, buy. And I'm over here investing in condo real estate properties with every little bit of money I had. Now, if you fast forward to about, 10 years ago, I drove by this guy's new house, and it's like a 10,000 square foot mansion on the lake. Had I just taken that same money I was dumping into condos in a college town, Raleigh, North Carolina, and put that into Qualcomm, you guys wouldn't be looking at me right now. I wouldn't be here.
Hey.
The explosive growth of that chipset, that ARM chipset, is what I'm talking about.
Yep. When I first joined Intel, they gave me 2,000 stock options back in 1984. If I'd have held on to those now, I wouldn't be talking to you on this phone call now. I'm sorry, but I didn't. The one that got away.
Okay, so I'm going to go back and talk about what you just talked about. I think you talked about Raspberry Pi, not NComputing yet, but Raspberry Pi. So Simon, a couple years ago, with what some of the other guys or the other competitor in space was doing, I would come to you guys, myself and Pete Downing would come to you guys, say, when you doing ARM? Citrix is doing ARM. Why aren't we doing ARM on the IGEL side? You're killing us. We don't have a story to tell. And you guys would say exactly what you just said. It just doesn't have the power. I would get one of the other devices, bring it home, and after a day or two of being turned on, I'd have to hard reset it because it would just die on me. So what you're saying now is the platform around the ARM computing solution has enough power now that IGEL feels comfortable putting your beautiful operating system on it?
That is precisely the situation. Yeah, we think it's matured to a level where we really have got the strength to put a hardcore operating system on it and to basically deliver what our customers are looking for from this. We think it's going to be a very competitive platform with the UD2, frankly, and it's going to be a very interesting phase we go through over the next 2, 3, 5 years as this product. And remember, it's version 1 at the moment. Mm-hmm. So today we're only supporting the Chromium browser and Citrix Workspace app as the primary graphics protocols. We've got 17 protocols on the x86 architecture. We will catch up. We probably won't put all 17 of those on ARM because they're not all available for ARM. But it's a maturing platform, and I have regular conversations with VMware, Teradici, Amazon, Microsoft about what are their ARM plans and how do we make sure that IGEL stays in tune with them and delivers to our customers the most effective platform.
So Simon, I want to get the other guys to chime in here, but I did want to bring up two things. So it's not just an IGEL story, right? The other guys, Citrix and others, have to play along and have their app that runs on top of your Linux operating system. It's got to be prepared to go on ARM as well. It's not just IGEL by themselves responsible for making this work, right?
Precisely. So this is actually a fairly tight partnership with Citrix. We went to Citrix and said, who would you recommend for our partner? And they strongly recommended NComputing as the most viable platform with a reliable enterprise quality device. There's a lot of cheaper Raspberry Pi devices out there, but if you want quality and you want good solid engineering, it's got a fan, it's got an on-off switch, it's got all the things that you'd want from a device that is an enterprise quality device, and that's what we were looking for. And believe me, we've thrown this thing around, attacked it, and thrown a lot of software at it, and had it run hot and had it run cold, and tried different things, and it stands up really well. Very impressed with what our friends at NComputing have done.
So I don't want to keep dominating this. I'm going to hand it over to the other guys in just a second. I'll stage these conversations, and maybe Chris and Dan will chime in on these. How does this compare to like the Citrix Workspace Hub? Oh, crud, I forgot what question I was going to ask. It was really, okay, so Simon, you said you're only doing this with the Chromium browser, which is now part of your operating system, and the Citrix Workspace app. Now that sounds small compared to the 17 total or whatever it was, but that's a massive part of your user base that use one of those two things, right? Is it half or more?
It's over half of our user base. Dan can probably answer that one, but I have it down as somewhere between 60 and 65% of our base are using Citrix, and then a further 10 to 15% are using Chromium. That sounds like slightly too much, but it's in that order of magnitude, that somewhere between a half and 3/4 of our business. Dan?
Yeah, that's true. It is a little bit over half at this point. This doesn't preclude going forward adding, Horizon and some other protocols and applications. But with the Workspace app, that's what most customers want. It's the Workspace app. Now we also plan around the GA time to also support the Workspace Hub. But right now the product is in evaluation, and we're getting feedback on its ability to deliver a great Workspace app experience. The feedback's been very, 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 very good, very, very solid on this thing. So,
the interesting thing about Workspace Hub is that we're working closely with Citrix, and they're actually on the 2.0 version of Workspace Hub, and that's what we're putting on our device. It's not quite the same Workspace Hub as you've seen on the previous implementation from NComputing. So we're doing some work to tune that at the moment. We will definitely be shipping something, whether it's the full GA version or whether it's an extended beta of the Workspace Hub, when we go live on February the 25th with the GA version of the NComputing device. It'll be GA for Workspace app. It may still be in beta for Workspace Hub.
And Simon, how will that look? Will you toggle between one versus the other? Workspace Hub is supposed to be like this kind of all-in-one, kind of get you into your Citrix session through efficiency type of thing. Will you have to surface one versus the other? Will it be a toggle switch, or?
No, you just one works on top of the other. They work side by side. Workspace Hub is an extended set of functionality to Workspace app. There's no toggling between the two. If you need the incremental capabilities that Workspace Hub brings along for casting and moving between devices and some of the fancy graphic transfer between small devices, that'll just be an augmentation of what the standard product is doing. There's no switch you have to turn on or decide what mode you're booting it in. It's just incremental functionality.
Right. So the Workspace app is the natural starting point. It's kind of a foundation for that, right? Workspace Hub is the superset functionality.
Right. Hey, so Chris, I know you've been doing a lot of research on this prior to this podcast. Are there some topics that we've kind of touched around that you want to bring up here?
I think I was looking at it. We have a very extensive FAQ, and the natural questions that probably pop right out of the gate are, can we just use any Raspberry Pi that's out there? And so, and then probably the second question would be, can I use a UD Pocket on an existing Raspberry Pi device? And so we do answer those. I guess the official answer, I'll just read it right here, is goodness, I'm looking at it. We are working closely.
No.
Thank you, Simon.
Yeah, it's one word. It's called no.
I'll be very political here.
Which bit of no didn't you get, Chris?
Yes.
That's an interesting topic, because one of the concepts of a Raspberry Pi is take it and do whatever the heck you want with it. But if you want support in an enterprise world, the answer is no.
Oh, and enterprise stability, right? You want enterprise quality and stability on the product, right? You don't want people tinkering with it.
It clearly says no right there. I just missed that first word. But the answer is no, followed by this. Other ARM or Raspberry Pi with this may work, but they are not supported. Customers will receive a notification every time they boot the device that it is not a supported platform. So there is that answer. And then a little bit further down, about the UD Pocket. No, IGEL is focused on supporting the NComputing RX 420. There is no plan to enable IGEL OS RPI4 for other Raspberry Pi implementations at this time. So don't try booting a UD Pocket to it.
Yeah, the UD Pocket contains the operating system for the x86 architecture. There are no plans to build the UD Pocket with the IGEL OS open brackets RPI4 close brackets product on a USB stick. Theoretically, anything and everything's possible, but don't hold your breath out for that one. It's a smart card inside the inside those Raspberry Pi devices. If we ever move in that direction, which we have no plans to do, why wouldn't we just ship a new smart card out to people and say, here, plug this smart card in?
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll tell you one reason why you wouldn't do that, because it breaks the warranty. People like NComputing actually seal their devices, so you just can't switch in and out a new smart card. But the traditional Raspberry Pi market, and which most of us have played with, you just switch in a new smart card and you start playing with it and putting new software on it. You can do all kinds of things with this and play with it. But our target market is enterprise deployments, and so beware.
So Simon, that's interesting because you said the word play, and that's what a lot of people do with Raspberry Pis. And again, generation 1. So this is kind of the intro one, and but you eventually see this becoming in a company that's strategic, and I use that word very specifically. Strategically uses SaaS-based computing or virtual desktop or app computing, probably desktop computing in most cases. This is going to be the answer for the enterprise, if not this year, down the road. You see this as being the answer for the secure, easy to manage, small form factor, energy efficient endpoint, right? Absolutely.
And one of my favorite use cases that we're exploring at the moment with a major customer is call centers. Call centers are traditionally and especially ones where you have expanding demand and shrinking demand, and how do we move and how do we enable home workers to be effective call center employees? Basically, send them a Raspberry Pi that's being or an NComputing device that's being configured with the IGEL software. I can see that you're working. I can see how many hours you did work. I can make sure that you're restricted to only do the stuff that I want you to do. When you're plugged in, all you have to do is plug in and monitor this thing, a keyboard and a mouse, and you're away. You're starting to take calls. We can track calls to you. We can see exactly what you're doing. It's the perfect use case. And then when you fire that employee or that employee's not working, you've lost $100. That, traditionally they've been shipping PCs to these people, which arrive in a broken up state and all kinds of problems. Now you just plug in a Raspberry Pi, or an NComputing device. It's a great solution. And, I think it's a disposable thin client. There's a lot of benefit in a disposable thin client. The price point has come down to that level where it makes sense to think of it as something that you can throw away after a year.
Well, just listening to a radio show this morning, and they were talking about the push towards electronic vehicles or electric vehicles, and they start talking about, okay, now what are you going to do with all these batteries and things when it's time to dispose of them? You can't just throw them you can't just bury them. And so, this e-waste is a major, major issue, has been for a couple decades. We often just kind of pretend it's not there. I've started a nonprofit to try to reuse old computers for other nonprofits. And there's all kinds of challenges around e-waste. And this is a great example of how we can solve that through modern efficiencies and modern technologies like just a better replacement for those PCs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, the other thing is it's a low power device, right? So there's a green factor there as well in terms of, carbon footprint, energy consumption, et cetera. That's another nice thing about it.
And that's an interesting conversation too, because if you can convince a company that green is not about being environmentally focused, it's about saving money, all of a sudden these things just pay for themselves.
Precisely.
Yeah.
So, Simon, I know you've only got a few more minutes with us. The blog that was written, is there anything specific in there that we haven't called out? I know we've talked about a ton of it so far.
Nothing I can think of at the moment. I know everyone's going to be screaming at us when we can get onto new platforms. I'd say, bear with us. It's like I hate to reiterate the old Windows 1, 2, 3 version. Every Microsoft product, version 1, version 2, and the one you really want to invest in and go full Algon is the version 3. I'd say we're beyond version 1 at the moment. We're on version 2. But there's some tuning we have to do on this product. I'd be the first to say that, we are moving forward aggressively. We need to work with our customers. It will fit for certain use cases, but it's not going to be the panacea for every use case. The old UD2 is a phenomenally powerful, very reliable, very fully managed control device. And, I see that hanging on for a long, long time. And it's not that much more expensive than an NComputing device. So please don't be thinking that, we need to move everything over to ARM now. It's not going to work that way. It'll be a slowly and steady migration.
I know this is an ARM podcast, but isn't Intel and the x86 platform becoming smaller and more efficient all at the same time as well? I mean, that's happening in parallel.
Yeah,
right?
those embedded chips. Absolutely.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, the other thing about the UD2 from a positioning standpoint is that the UD2 is purposely not Wi-Fi and Bluetooth capable, right? So if you're in a secure environment where they want to make sure the device can never support over-the-air, quote unquote, the UD2 is a logical choice for that kind of an environment. See that in government sometimes, even manufacturing.
And I'll put in a plug here for some of my other IGEL ready partners. People like OnLogic are building a very small form factor x86 device that is pretty nifty. Go have a look at some of those other alternative players out there. They've built some really nice, and they're not that much more expensive than an ARM device. So there's lots of options out there. Take the time to go and evaluate would be my recommendation.
Well, and you bring up these guys, and we work with LG a lot, and I'm sitting there looking at the LG devices. They're fairly tiny anyway. I mean, compared to the old days of, I got a great big workstation sitting on my desk here, and I'm running a Linux operating system on it as well, and I'm looking at it going, man, that's such a waste of space and power, but just happens to be what I reconfigured. And that's the beautiful thing about the IGEL story, right? You bring the device you want, and then all of a sudden that includes ARM, but to Chris's point, you just don't get to bring your own device. But certainly a platform for IGEL now.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to, before Simon goes, there is a very specific thing about this. It's the 32-bit version of the Workspace app from Citrix, not 64-bit. And I know that there was a reason for that. Simon or Dan, could you speak to that for a few minutes?
Yeah, I'll take that one, and before I go, and then I'll hand over to Dan. So at the moment, Citrix Workspace app, Citrix Workspace Hub are both 32-bit implementations in the ARM and the Linux for ARM implementations by Citrix. Actually, any customer pressure we can put on Citrix to build that 64-bit version will be much appreciated. So contact your Citrix SE and let them know, hey, we really need a 64-bit version of this. The interesting thing of it is it actually works really well. And we've done, there's some really nice video podcasts out there by Jeff Kalberg and Frederick Bradstig showing the speed and the performance they've been able to achieve with a 32-bit Teams implementation on 32-bit Workspace app and that functionality. The problem comes when you're trying to interface that with other 64-bit applications, and then you can get into a little bit of trouble. So it's a 32-bit world at the moment. I want to hasten to add that our implementation it's a 64-bit architecture, and it's a 64-bit operating system. We're just running it in 32-bit apps on it. So there's plenty of room for IGEL to grow with that platform. We just need a little bit of help from the graphical protocol providers looking at Citrix in particular. The Chromium implementation is a 64-bit implementation. That too can be run in 32-bit mode. So, plenty of room for the future.
Yeah, it's a classic example, right, of the interdependencies we have with our partners. And some of this is classic chicken and egg, right? You want to have the market demand to create the impetus for our partners to develop some of these things. So over time, as this matures, right, we can expect things like eventually a 64-bit implementation, a lot of other capabilities going over time.
Yeah. Hey, Simon, I know you got to go. I appreciate you joining. We'll have another 2.0 version of this podcast down the road, and we can talk about, some of the latest questions and what's working and what's not working and what's coming.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks,
Great.
Chris. Thanks, Dan. Speak to you guys soon.
Thanks, Simon.
And bye, everybody.
Thanks.
So, guys, I think at this point, maybe what path do we want to go down, Dan? Is there more just kind of high-level information?
I think I can add a little bit more kind of on how this actually gets delivered to market, right? So this software, we call it IGEL OS parentheses RPI4 for Raspberry Pi 4. It is IGEL OS, but it's delivering obviously a subset of the full capability, and it's developed for Workspace app, and then eventually Workspace Hub will be folding in after that. As far as delivery of the product, the hardware goes through NComputing. So you buy the hardware from Computing through their multi-tiered distribution network. And likewise, you buy the software licenses, the right to use those devices from IGEL, as you always have, through our distribution channel partner network. So none of that is any different. In fact, the licenses for what we call Workspace Edition and Enterprise Management Pack are sold exactly as they would for an x86 device, because the licenses themselves can even be migrated. So when so basically you're just going to buy your license for Workspace Edition. If it happens to land on a NComputing device, then it turns on, if you will, the IGEL OS RPI4 software, vice versa. So it's kind of nice. So you could be an existing customer with a bunch of x86 devices, and maybe you open up a new call center, right? Or you hire a bunch of new call center engineers and you send them out these Raspberry Pis. If you want to migrate a license from an aging x86 device, for example, onto one of these NComputing devices, you can do that.
So Dan, I just want to be clear here. So licensing, nothing changes. And as far as management, UMS and ICG, IGEL Cloud Gateway, all that stuff just keeps working.
Yep, no difference. Okay.
Chris, you want to jump in? Is there another question that was in the FAQ that you think would be good to highlight here and get people headed down the right path sooner?
Yeah, I mean, it's a very good FAQ. Definitely spend time reading over it. There's some great data sheets out there as well, both on the IGEL site that kind of give you some details about the device. It looks pretty nifty. I mean, as some of you know, NComputing has different color the options. Ours is going to be black with yellow. If you haven't seen the pictures of it, they are out there, but that signifies that it is an IGEL device. The fact that it has powered by IGEL on it too should be obvious, but just some basic stuff about that. Obviously, there's quite a bit. It does ship with a 30-day starter license, as any device that has our OS on it from the get-go. That was a 30-day license we came out with in version 11.3.500 last April, and then and obviously you can change that to a production license, or even change it to a 90-day eval license if you would like. It does include our codecs once you get to that 90-day, but the 30-day license never does have the codecs components. Great question about dual monitor support. Without looking at the FAQ and having not touched this, I'm going to say yes. Dan, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, dual HD monitor support. There's a really good demo, a video demo that Frederick Bratznick put together. It's on YouTube, which is showing this thing delivering a very, very high quality HD video. So you can get a very good quality user experience with this little device. The other thing is, if you want more info, you just go to igel.com/NComputing. That's where you'll find the data sheet, copy of the press release, some narrative content describing the product, etc. So yeah, igel.com/NComputing, and you can get the latest information on the product itself.
Yeah.
And a quick shameless plug here for XenTegra. We're trying to acquire, let's say, roughly 50 of these devices to get to our customers to try and demo. If you're not a XenTegra customer, I'll do what I can to get you one at the best price. But if you're somebody that's in the XenTegra family, reach out to us. We're going to buy a bunch of these that we can get in your hands.
Yeah, following up real quickly on the dual monitors. So there's two micro HDMI ports that support either a single display with resolution up to 4K at 60 hertz or the dual display natively at 4K 30 hertz for both the dual display. So some specifics on that.
Hey, Chris, does that require the piggyback unit, or is all in the one base unit?
One base unit.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and it does have a little Visa mount kit too, if you want to put it on the back of a monitor, for example. Yeah, you got multiple USBs, two USB 3.0 and two USB 2.0 ports. So it's got all the gazintas and gazatas you would normally need as a typical.
Yeah, it's got a let's see here, a gigabit Ethernet port. It also has a power in USB-C. We already talked about the dual micro HDMI.
Yeah.
It's the audio jack is 16-bit, 44 kilohertz stereo, high quality. It has a power button with sleep mode for power savings. Additionally, there was something else I was going to mention. Maybe it's on the first page.
Chris, here's the challenge for you and I. We have to start at some point using this device for the podcast.
Yes, I do need to request one. I was going to say it also is 5 gigahertz Wi-Fi. We didn't really talk about that, but it does have that in comparison to our UD2, which does not have Wi-Fi, as Dan mentioned earlier.
Hey, here's a question for you guys. As as it evolves and the software becomes smarter on top of the hardware, you're essentially just going to use your IGEL management system to send out firmware updates to it.
Yep, that's normal.
That's normal, right? I mean, you don't even have to think about how you're going to do it different. It'll just be package you download or get from IGEL, and the system can get it to the endpoint.
Yep.
So Dan, I know that the name of the device, right? Everybody talks about Raspberry Pi, but I think we actually can't use that or something. Can you speak to that for a second? What is the actual product name that we're supposed to be calling it?
Yeah, we were originally going to call it the software IGEL OS for ARM. And we got in touch with ARM, and there are certain trademark restrictions around that. So, we decided that the best way to describe this version of IGEL OS is just simply IGEL OS parentheses RPI4, Raspberry Pi 4. When we talk about it in our collateral, when we talk about the software, we talk about it as IGEL OS for ARM architecture. And ARM is spelled capital A, small r, small m.
Yeah.
The ARM no longer wants anyone to use all caps for ARM, which is an acronym. Originally, it was an acronym that described the architecture itself. So you'll see it in all of our collateral. We're using it correctly. We're describing it correctly. But when we write about it, it's IGEL OS for ARM architecture. And the product software itself is called IGEL OS RPI4. The physical device that NComputing is selling, right, is simply the RX420 parens IGEL, because it's by virtue of its yellow color, powered by IGEL. It's the model that they sell just for and only for IGEL applications.
Yeah, the RX420 Hedgie edition, right?
That's
right.
Hedgie the Hedgehog. Yeah, that's the first thing people start saying to me. They're gonna make it hedgehog form factor. It's like, that's stupid, but you know what? That'd be kind of neat.
Awesome. It
Awesome.
looks cool. The IGEL yellow looks really cool on this black device, so it kind of stands out.
Yeah, very much so. If you're a Steelers fan, for sure.
Yeah.
Oh, I actually thought about exactly that, Chris. Like, why can't you just make one in every different color to match NFL teams? People are so addicted to their pro sports stuff that they would buy it based on the colors.
Probably would. I don't know if there's anything. I mean, we've got a ton of information on this. Obviously, a very and much anticipated announcement. We have, one thing I love about Dan and his team is when they put out information, it's high quality, from our infographics to data sheets and among other things. And so, thank you. I have been well prepared, at least to talk through some of this, Dan, because I knew it was in the works, the Skunk Works program or whatever we had at the time. So thank you for all the work that your team does.
Sure. Thanks, Chris. And we'll be highlighting this during our Disrupt event. We purposely announced it during Citrix field kickoff event, right? Because Citrix is such an important partner to us, and it's really all about Citrix in its first rendition. But we'll highlight it again. We'll talk about it at our own Disrupt Unite event, which is later this week. And the other thing too is I've had a few people ask me, well, what about other protocols? What about Horizon? What about someday having something like this, Access WBD or something like that? And nothing's off the table, but that's going to be more of an evolution, right? We don't have any dates yet for any other protocols. This is sort of like the old crawl, walk, and then run. The foundation's really solid. It's a really good piece of hardware. IGEL OS is really solid, but the focus is Citrix primarily. I would say for the most part of this next year, for 2021, it's all about Citrix. And we'll see how this evolves over time. Yeah.
And the beauty here is, you said the keyword focus. I mean, for this, there are other hardware platforms. You need VMware or whatever. We got plenty of options out there, whether it's an IGEL device, UD Pocket plugged into something else. I mean, it's not like we're repressing anything regarding VMware or other protocols. There's plenty of options out there, whether you repurpose or buy new hardware or whatever. So,
well, the other thing that I always look forward to, and this always happens, once we get these out there, we're going to learn from customers. We'll probably find use cases we've never dreamed of, right? So it's sort of like, let's get it out there. Let's have our customer base start, getting their fingernails dirty with this. And, I think the sky's the limit in terms of where this might go. But let's start with something solid and just see what happens.
Yeah. Well, guys, I appreciate it. We'll do it again when the next blog comes out on this topic. I'm sure there'll be more, and we'll have more anecdotal stuff to talk about, maybe customer feedback, and we'll see where this is going. I appreciate you guys joining.
Awesome. Thank you, Andy. Thank you, Dan.
Awesome. Thanks, Andy. Thanks, guys.
And I appreciate you guys working on this. This is really checked the box for us that we've, people have been coming to us and wanting the IGEL story, but not having ARM kind of precluded some of them from moving forward. This is great to see.
Yeah, it's just
and don't forget, Andy, this was the best IGEL podcast of the 10 o'clock hour on the East Coast. So,
what is it? January something?
That's right.
The best IGEL podcast of the day, or at least this hour. And
that's right.
For joining.
that.
Dan, yeah. Thank you very much. Y'all have a good one.
All right, guys. Thank you.